I'm going to be going over Module 4, Performance Measurement and Monitoring of Sustainable Initiatives in Your Own Business. Now, the whole concept of measurement and monitoring is really important if you were to run a sustainable business in relation to tourism. So let us go over the module and see what is included. So the title of section A is termed Sustainability Management System. How do we set up the sustainable management system? Okay, so the first thing that we need to look at in demonstrating that you have an effective sustainable management system is whether you have a document to prove your sustainability management system, which actually covers a policy, the objectives, and the processes. Now, very often businesses have a lot of initiatives that have a bearing on sustainable management, but most of them, particularly the small and medium sector tourism enterprises, do not have a documented coverage of the policies, the objectives, and the processes. So the first thing you need to do is to get down to writing up a document to prove that you have a sustainable management system which covers policies, objectives, and processes. Now, how would you do this? Does the sustainability system demonstrate the following? So your policies, your objectives, and whatever you document in this policy should address the following. How to minimize negative environmental impacts is really vital. Then, secondly, how you minimize negative social impacts. Now, we have environmental impacts, we also have social impacts. Social impacts have a bearing on the communities that are within or in the radius of our enterprise. Then we also have to look at how you minimize negative cultural impacts, which also is very important, being in a country like Sri Lanka that is steeped in many, many different types of cultures, people, races, all that. Then we also need to look at, if you're looking at a sustainable product, we need to see how you can minimize negative economic impacts. Now, as you know, the sustainability 3 pillars are environment, social, and economic. So we also need to build in how to minimize negative economic impacts. Now, further than that, it also has to have a bearing on, do you have a means of maintaining product service quality? Now, tourism business is a service industry. So we need to look at how you maintain service quality, right? The quality is really what is most important in doing a tourism business. So your whole process or your whole policy or your whole document should have a section which looks at quality, service quality. Then a next most important thing is human rights. Every tourism facility should have a human rights policy because we are dealing with people. And also, finally, we have to take regard to travelers' health and safety. So that is really vital after the last experience we had with our COVID and all these, viral diseases, communicable diseases, any other thing that, has an impact on the tourism quality, and also, of course, the very vital impact of safety. Now, we also need to look at something really important, and that means, does the sustainable management system include consideration of risk management? Now, risks are a part of any operation. So, for example, we could have risks with respect to erosion if it's a beach facility. During different times of the year, you have the sea getting rougher in certain places, and there can be a risk of sea erosion on your hotel, for example. So we need to look at environmental risks, social risks, all cultural risks, because sometimes, you may be in a place where you have fishers that traverse your hotel and go into their marvel, fishing areas. So those are risks that we have, and they might be very angry with you having constructed your hotel right in the path of their, fisheries enterprises. So we need to consider risks in this document that we are working on. Then, of course, we have to consider crisis management. Now, crisis management is important. Now, we hadn't thought it was such an important issue until we got so much of experience recently with the pandemic that hit our country, where we had a very big impact on the tourism industry. Now, as you know, in 2018, 2019, the early part of 2019, before we had this Easter bombing, we had a really good booming tourism industry. But suddenly we had crisis after crisis. So we had the Easter bombing first, which really had a huge impact on the tourism industry, followed by the pandemic, which was a worldwide problem that we had. There was no tourism. Tourism came to a grinding halt. And then, of course, in Sri Lanka, we had a next issue of the economic downturn. So you see, these crises, we don't really think that they are something we should consider. But of course, we have to in looking at our sustainable management. Now, most of these small and medium enterprises that we are talking about had to deal with these kinds of crises. And most of the time, they couldn't. So a lot of them had to close. So if you write the crisis management into our sustainable management system, we'll be able to deal with it much easier and be ready for it if anything crops up. Now, next thing we have to look at is the process of implementation of the sustainable management system documented with evidence. Now, we always can say that we have done this or we have done that, we have dealt with some issue that we are facing, but everything we do has to be documented with evidence. So you have to set up a system that anything that has a bearing on the sustainable management of your tourism enterprise has to be documented. And you have to take photographs, you have to, maybe have a report on something that, you have dealt with. Supposing you have had an issue with the fishers, like I mentioned earlier, and you have successfully sort of stopped it or you have mitigated it, then of course you need to record that and have some evidence with you that that was done. So it's very important for you to document with evidence. Then, does the system include a process for monitoring continuous improvement? Now, we have got to look at continuous improvement. That is, if we are dealing with something today and we cannot deal with it because of lack of funds, maybe lack of resources, maybe lack of staff to deal with it, we then have to look at how are we going to improve this as we move on. So the process for monitoring has to always deal with continuous improvements. So just bear in mind that one, you have to look at documenting with evidence. Second one is that you have to look at continuous improvement. Now, that section is all about how you document your sustainability management system, how you look at all your policies, your processes, and everything that you do into a